My name is Mrs. Okoye. I'm making this testimony from Abuja. My story started in 2022. My daughter was diagnosed with encephalitis, an infection of the brain. My daughter was going, like she was not talking, she wasn't swallowing. She couldn't see well anymore. She was losing her sight. And the day we got that diagnosis, she was placed on admission and she aspirated that night. By the next day, she was on oxygen. Within maybe another couple of days, she aspirated a second time and she ended up in the ICU on life support. Couldn't respond. Half of her body was paralyzed. They didn't know what it was. They just said we should do an MRI. And we did the MRI. One of the doctors reviewed it and said she had a tumor in the pons. A tumor in the pons is a death sentence. And, I was already on the fire altar. I say, that was a story. And eventually the doctors were kept, arguing among themselves. This one will say he can see there's something is there, but he's not exactly sure what it is. And they advised us to take her out of the country. And so we took her to India, my sister and I. My sister is a doctor and she's an NSPPDian. And when we got to India, they did their MRI and then they said there was reduced flow of blood to her brain. And they said, well, it was still the encephalitis, but it's a relapse and it's an autoimmune condition. The guy said she had irreversible brain damage. And I looked at him and in my head, I'm like, this one a story. In my head, I said, God, what God cannot do does not exist. I didn't even used to bother to argue with him. Me and my sister, we did not even let it go. Like they took us, they said we should leave the room. We were just screaming and shouting and praying on the hallway. Everybody knew that fire had come to India. They will come the next day, no infection, they'll come and take blood, no infection, no infection, no infection, no infection. And then one day the doctor looked at me and he said, I believe you have the hand of the divine. At that point I was like, wow. Okay, in my head, she was still not moving, not talking, not doing anything. And half of her body was paralyzed. So in my head I was like, oh, so God has started, My daughter was 6 then when we took her to India, about to turn 7. And we came back to Nigeria. She was still not talking, nothing. I was advised to get her a wheelchair. She was getting heavy herself because backing her was so difficult. She had the feeding tube in her nose, so we're feeding liquid feed and all that. And I just kept, holding on to God, staying on the altar daily, putting her name, putting her picture and all that. And then my birthday was on December 11th, 2022. And my husband said, what do you want for your birthday? And I said, I don't want anything. I just want to worship in streams of joy that day. December 11th was a Sunday. And so he said, okay, we'll go. So we got to Streams of Joy and it was an amazing service. And then pastor says, like he would say, if you know that you want to make Streams of Joy your church, come out. And I came out and Papa said, I don't know what you came. It's just a regular prayer he prays, but that whatever brought you here, I pray that God will meet you at your point of need. And I said amen and we went back home. The first miracle was we were able to take out the tube, and then January came, 21 days fast. I joined the fast. On 25th January, immediately I became live. I just heard there's somebody here and they said you have restricted flow of blood to your brain, and he commanded it to be reversed.
I don't know who you are, but they said there's a restriction of blood flow to your brain. If you are the one or it is your loved one, put it on the live stream. By the power that raised Jesus from the dead, I announce, let it be reversed right now.
And I said amen, and we were screaming, we were shouting, we were crying, and that's how my daughter started talking. But she still had the paralysis and she still couldn't move. On the 15th, Papa now said, I don't know what they said happened to your brain. The doctor says it's almost irreversible. And then he put his hand, one side of your body is paralyzed, and then he commanded it to be reversed in 3 days.
I don't know what they said happened to your brain. One side of your body has been paralyzed. I don't know what they said happened. And they said it's almost irreversible. It's almost irreversible. In 3 days, if you want to keep back your testimony, I command, let the paralysis disappear.
And I said amen. I knew that was our word. And I clipped it again and was playing it to her. And then 3 days later, I remember in the morning, because I was counting, okay, so 3 days, and then in the morning I went to talk to my daughter and I told her, give mommy a high five. The right side, she couldn't, like, the hand was bent in a funny way. She raised it up and she gave me a high five. And before we knew what, she was walking. And then there was one day Papa said,
I hear encephalitis, encephalitis, whatever that means, I command, let it be reversed.
And since then, those temperature spikes that, I have to be switching on the gen have been gone. Today is 2nd of January. My daughter is fine. She's doing fantastic. She's walking, she's talking, she's reading, she's writing, she can see. And she has not had a relapse. She has not had a relapse. I just want to give God all the glory. Elroy, the God that sees us, we don't take it for granted.